Street photography is an easy genre to get into. All you need is a camera, and then you can head outside and take some photos. But street photography can be hard to master. It certainly starts out and can be tricky to navigate whilst trying to capture photos of people. Street photography is rewarding and challenging, and you can take it anywhere in the world. I'm still learning and continue my practice, but I wanted to share with you some of my tips that I think could help you on this street photography journey. Hey, what is going on, everyone? Here are my 5 tips for street photography. Let your creative self out. Let that creativeness, whatever it is, that little spark inside you, let it out. Don't be afraid. Something that I have to remind myself, photography is, it's essentially an art. It's an expression of ourselves. It's a process of creating little pieces of art when we press the shutter. Let yourself be creative. Feel those creative juices flowing. And I know for a lot of us, this might feel a little bit uncomfortable to say that we are a creative. Or we may be asking ourselves, how do I become more creative? I'm not creative enough. Look at all the other work out there that's absolutely creative. But I think that creation, that imagination is in all of us. Maybe some more than others, or maybe some of us have just locked it up in a little box. Maybe allow yourself to be a little bit creative. Start creating a little bit more and use your imagination. I think it's down to being afraid what we put out there, because the world is a judgy place, and anything we put out on the internet about ourselves is scary, it's daunting. What if someone judges me? What if they don't like it? Oh no. Yeah. All these what ifs are barriers, and they're negative barriers, but try and push through it. Allow the creation to come out. And really, don't worry if your creative spark doesn't come out when you're doing photography. It doesn't mean you're doing it wrong or you're not as good as other people. It just means your process is a little bit different. Obviously, there are masters of photography that have been doing it for years and years, and maybe there are people who are just naturally gifted at picking up the camera, but for some people it takes time. Allow yourself that time, have fun with it. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. You might not even notice you're being creative until you look back and think, oh, I'm actually pretty creative. But again, it's down to the individual. So don't be too hard on yourself. It looks different to everyone. And if you do find yourself doing something creative, then maybe that can be translated into a little body of work. The world is your oyster when it comes to creative things. So have fun, don't take it too seriously, and just get out there and start doing street photography. Observation and intent. Start to see behaviors, light conditions, your surroundings. Open your eyes to what's around you. I think it's really important when we're out on the street doing street photography that you start looking at your surroundings. It can be a lot to take in sometimes, but when you practice the art of observation and noticing, the world really starts to open up. You might find that you find a lot more opportunities. So take your time, maybe sit down, try to slow down a little bit and start looking at what you might be able to create. Obviously, just don't be too creepy with it. There's a lot of great advice out there and a lot of great teachers and a lot of great photographers who talk about the art of observation. And within that, we can start to look at human behavior. Human behavior is pretty predictable at times. We are creatures of habit, no matter how you look at it. We all love a little bit of a routine. So if you see a scene and you see something unfolding, maybe follow your gut. If you're thinking, that's gonna be pretty cool, it'd be really great if someone walked into that light or into that frame. The chances are a human will probably enter that scene, enter the light, enter your frame at some point. It's just about having patience. When you start to observe a bit more, then I think you can start to shoot with a bit more intention. If you think about it and you ask yourself, what's the reason I'm pressing the shutter? I think that's my kind of favorite point that I'm gonna make throughout this video. What is the purpose of pressing the shutter? It's something that I always come back to time and time again. What's the intent with what you're about to capture? This can be an intricate answer, and it can also be a really short one without a lot of meaning, but both are equally as important. The intricate answer that you might be looking for or asking yourself or answering is, this setup is technically great. There's layers, it's a great frame, perfect subjects. And the flip side of that, the short answer is, because I wanted to take the shot, just because. I felt like taking the shot right there, right then. Something in you has made you press the shutter. Both are great reasons and both work. Photography is art, art is expression, expression is subjective. Don't overcomplicate it. Choice hinders the creation. I think this is such an important one for those who struggle with choice. I try to stick to a minimal setup. One camera body, one prime or one zoom. There's no need to be lugging around 5 lenses, 3 filters, 3 camera bodies, a flash, a tripod. You want to move light, so pack minimally. My advice is to stick to 1 focal length, maybe even 2 for the day. There's no point spending 1 hour using the 18, 30 minutes, the 35, and then 51 minutes with a 90mm. Obviously, that's only when you're using primes. If you're using a zoom lens, then you're pretty set up already. Again, maybe with that, try and stick to a focal length on the zoom lens. Practice, practice, practice until you feel comfortable. I know it's scary to limit yourself in this way, and that little voice inside your head comes in and says, what if I miss a shot? More importantly, what if I miss the shot that's going to define me as a photographer and make me a world-renowned, famous person? Let me say that there's always going to be shots that you miss. There's always shots that are going to go unshot. It's part of the process. And there will always be more shots as the world keeps spinning. But honestly, it's really important that you start to feel comfortable, get acquainted with your kit, with your camera, with your lens, with the focal lengths that you're going to be using, so that in the future you won't miss as many shots. You'll be confident in creating and setting up the shots that you want, but learn to let go of all the shots that you're not going to get. Just learn to let go of everything but being in that moment with your gear and knowing it so well that you create opportunity for yourself. So try to keep it minimal. Don't overload yourself. Keep it simple so your brain has time to adjust to your setup. Keep it simple so that you have time to make your shots better. Framing. Finding interesting frames in the world is so important. This, for me and for a lot of you, is a continual process, but framing is something that we're continuously doing whilst looking through the viewfinder. Framing is definitely something that I'm at the moment working on, but framing a subject in a unique and interesting way is something that can really make your photo stand out and look really visually pleasing. Framing can be one of those things that you kind of go out and you can either create for yourself, that you can notice an interesting frame, then you kind of wait and you can fill the frame with an interesting subject that leads back to kind of observation. If there is a bit of light and you want to capture that scene, then that is your frame, and then you just wait for your subject to enter. You can then work on filling your frame at the moment of capturing a subject. So for instance, when you're up close and personal and you're trying to fill the frame with your subject's face, with their expression, then it can be done that way. You can also use objects and foreground items and to fill up the frames, and then place your subject somewhere outside of the object and the kind of the foreground. Each of them have their time and place, and there are different styles of street photography that you may have come across. Some work better than others at different points, and I think they all have their place when looking at framing. Framing is an important part of street photography. Cropping and editing. I love a little crop. Does this mean my photography is bad? Maybe. But a lot of the time I crop my images, I straighten them up to clean up the image. If you've done that, fair play, good job. Use the crop to clean the scene up. Get rid of those distracting things around the corners of the image. Clean up anything that is distracting the viewer away from the subject and away from the actual purpose of the photo. Make it look more presentable. You can also crop to highlight the subject more. Maybe you want to crop in, zoom in to enhance the subject. That's perfectly fine. And obviously crop to sometimes reframe. Sometimes working with an image, you just know that rotating it a little bit, or even flipping it upside down when using puddles, you just know that it's going to zhuzh it up a little bit. Obviously don't go too crazy with the crop and the edit. No one likes those massively oversaturated. Sometimes using a lower megapixel camera, you don't want to crop you don't want to zoom too much in as you might get a pixelated image, or don't play with the colors too much unless that's your style. Yeah, you don't need to whip the sliders up to the max amount. I think looking through my photos, starting to get a feel, starting to see some of my own style coming through. I think a lot of it is the photography that I'm doing, but a lot of it comes from the edit as well. I'm starting to see a kind of trend in my photos and the way I edit and the way I capture things. So I'm trying to keep that flow. Once you have your kind of editing down, then you can maybe, if you're using Lightroom or something, then you can start making your preset. It becomes a little bit easier and you can start to maintain a bit more of your own style, which I think is really important. I think a lot of us are trying to look for our own style and be unique. So just remember, cropping is allowed. Edit your photos to suit your style. You don't have to get the perfect photo when you're out and about. You can go back and crop it, edit it, make it black and white if it's blurry. Should we be aspiring to get the perfect photo every single time we're out? Probably not. It's not going to happen. Or at least not for me. There's going to be some times that we miss things. So yeah, don't be too hard on yourself. Come back, crop, edit in your style. Don't be afraid. Play around with it. See what you can come up with. Alright everybody, that's the end of my 5 tips. If you stuck around to the end, thanks for watching the full way through. I really appreciate it. I'm hopefully back up and running again. It's been quite a chaotic few months, so keep an eye out for more videos, and I hope to see you again soon. See you later.